Summon to the field, Earthbound Immortal Coco-Paca-Poo!
That had to be probably one of my favorite moments in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D. Love the Dark Signer arc. It's so nostalgic for me. And that's kind of where this video came in mind. This is a deck I play on DB Ladder from time to time for Edison rated, and it's Earthbound Immortals. Super fun, cheeky deck. Definitely by no means the most competitive deck, but definitely has a lot of nostalgia for me. The deck is super fun to play, and as always, the export file for this deck will be in the description box down below. While you're down there, make sure you guys hit that like button and definitely subscribe. Hit that bell so that you guys can see more Edison content. So let's get into this little deck profile here. The first thing we have here is 3 copies of Earthbound Immortal Coco-Paca-Poo, 3 copies of Asclepius, and 3 copies of Chaku-Chalhua. Now, these are the 3 least situational Earthbound Immortals, in my opinion, and have the most applicability in Edison format. Coco-Paca-Poo lets us swing over problem childs like Bryonic. Asclepius has some pretty cool synergy with cards like Torrential and Deck Dev, and allows us to blow up our opponent's board and deal a bunch of damage to them. And the Chaku-Chalhua allows us to burn our opponent, avoiding cards like E-Prison, and which is the bane of this deck. So all of them can also attack directly, so we can avoid Raikou by attacking directly, which is pretty nice. And then we have our 3 copies of Earthbound Linewalker. So Earthbound Linewalker in the Edison format is actually a TCG exclusive, which I find hilarious that the OCG didn't have this. They probably would have loved it. But basically what this card does is it prevents our Immortals from destroying themselves with their own effect. Next up, we have some Earthbound Immortal spells and traps. We have the Earthbound Immortal Revival, which allows us to discard a card and target an Earthbound Immortal and field spell in our graveyard and add them back to hand. The deck has its own Harpy's Feather Duster in the form of Earthbound Whirlwind, which just, if we control an Earthbound monster, we can destroy all spell and traps our opponent controls. Next up, we have 3 copies of Mausoleum of the Emperor. Mausoleum is the easiest field spell for this deck to just be able to pay 2,000, normal summon out our Earthbound Immortals, and then just start attacking our opponent directly and hopefully killing them in about 3 turns. Next up, we have 3 copies of My Body as a Shield. So My Body as a Shield is extremely powerful in this deck because our least favorite cards are Dimensional Prison, Raikou, and Snowman Eater. So it definitely helps us play around cards like that. So very critical card, really enjoy it. It also lets us play around Bottomless a little bit easier. So absolute include in my opinion. 1 MST and 3 Terraforming just to go grab our Mausoleum. Next up, we have the 1 Call of the Haunted, 2 Deck Dev. All of our Earthbound Immortals are virus targets, and this card is just so punishing in a format like Edison. Another Earthbound Speller Trap that we have in this deck is Earthbound Wave. This is just a generic Speller Trap negate while we have an Earthbound Immortal. And then next up we have the 1 Mirror Force and 1 Offerings to the Immortals. We pay a lot of life points in this deck. So cards like Offering to the Immortal allows us to get in that grind game a little bit better. While we have 3,000 or less life points, we can stop an attack, summon 2 tokens, and then go grab an Earthbound Immortal card. So let's say they've even dealt with the Mausoleum and our previous Earthbound Immortal. We can actually go grab Earthbound Immortal Revival because it is an Earthbound Immortal card. So this card is pretty relevant in a deck like this. Next up, we have 3 copies of Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. This card is kind of the MVP in this deck. Being able to discard our Earthbound Immortals to bounce our opponent's cards to the top of the deck, and then bring them back with our Call of the Haunted or our Revival of the Immortals is super powerful. Like, you'll see in the replay that I have here for you guys against Dragons that this card came up and it's just pretty relevant. Next up, we have the 1 Solemn Judgment, 1 Starlight Road, and 2 Trap Stun. For the side deck, we have 2 Cyber Dragon. Not really much we need to say about that. 2 more copies of Earthbound Whirlwind. Most of our Earthbound Immortals can just swing over Stardust, or we can attack directly anyway. So we can Earthbound Whirlwind pretty freely against certain decks, and even if they have Starlight Road, like Coco-Paca-Poo can deal with the Stardust Dragon. So next up, we have 2 Noblemen of Crossout. This is just, again, to deal with cards like Raikou and Snowman Eater and Fossil Dyna. And then we have 3 copies of Solar Release for the Vayu Turbo decks. We have 1 copy of Deck Dev, just to get that 3rd one running. 2 copies of Light Imprisoning Mirror to deal with Lightsworn, and Fairies, of course. And then the last card we're playing is 3 copies of Tuner's Scheme. If you guys don't know what this card does, check out like Billy Break's top deck list from the event at Edison, which allows us to take control of a monster when a synchro monster is summoned to our opponent's field. So even if like a neat little trick we can do is like if we have this set up with the Earthbound Immortal or Earthbound Whirlwind, we can like Whirlwind, they Starlight Road, and then we can snatch it, which is kind of neat. The extra deck is pretty linear. There's really not a lot to say about it. We don't really play tuners. We do play Starlight Road, so we do have some Stardust Dragons and some Chimera Techs in there so that we can contact with the Cyber Dragon. Let's check out this replay so you guys can see how goofy this deck really is. So in this replay, there are some misplays on my part just because I was super exhausted while filming this, and my favorite thing to do outside of playing a deck like this is to just, you know, play at 4 in the morning when I'm exhausted and play Rogue on DB Ladder. We've all been there, I'm sure. So let's get right into this. We start off with the hard set 5 pass. Our opponent sets a monster, which is Raikou. And then this is the setup I was talking about earlier, where we're just going to Wing Blast their set monster back. And then we'll call the Haunted back our Earthbound Immortal Kokopakapoo. And then we're going to hit our opponent for a total of 4,200. Now, fortunately for us, our opponent didn't have Gores here. So our opponent's going to go ahead and draw. They draw another Raikou, the Raikou we stacked on top of their deck. So they have 2 in hand. We're just going to go straight to battle phase and attack them directly. Now, misplay number 1 that we did here was not switch the Line Walker to defense. And then our opponent flips Raikou, targeting our Earthbound Immortal. We just hit them with the My Body as a Shield, and our opponent realizes that they can't win anymore. So they go to the next game. For this next game, our opponent kind of had a lot. So we open up with Mausoleum, My Body, Terraforming, Asla, and Trapstone. Our opponent sets some back row and passes it back to us. We activate Mausoleum of the Emperor and pay 2k. Normal summon out the Whale. They did have the MST, which is super unfortunate for us. We pass without setting our Trapstone. Again, this was the second misplay that we made. Our opponent summons out Raikou in defense. Normal summons Drago and hits us for 3,000. So they pass to us, showing us a Debris Dragon. We're not feeling too confident about this game here, so we activate the Mausoleum, we pay 2,000, we summon the Asla, we swing over the Kawaki Miru Drago, set 2, and pass to our opponent. Our opponent draws, and this is the next misplay we did. We probably should have just let them destroy the Asla Pichu here, but they targeted it instead of the Mausoleum for whatever reason, and then we chained the My Body. They pay 8 to take the Asla Pichu from us, and then swing at us. We flip the Revival, bring back the Chaku Chalhua, which is pretty important. Another thing to note is that I couldn't do it at all because I had the trap. Again, I was really tired for this replay, but it was a funny game, and you'll see that here in Game 3. So we open up with Wing Wind Blast, My Body as a Shield, Nobleman of Crossout, and Deck Dev. So we're in a pretty decent spot. I didn't want to overextend into Heavy Storm, so we don't set the Deck Dev here. They banish Future Fusion with Gold Sark, set some cards, pass to us. We Nobleman of Crossout their Mega Ham, and they suspiciously only have 1 left in deck. So we go ahead and we set some back row and pass it back to our opponent. We're pretty solid on back row here, so we draw, we top deck the Mausoleum of the Emperor, we flip the Line Walker just so that we can play around this Dust Tornado, and then we summon out the Kokopakapoo, in which they respond with Bottomless Trap Hole, but we had the My Body yet again. And then we hit them for 4,100 damage. And our opponent has a little bit of salt here. He says, "You always have that. Incredible." I'm like, I have 3 of them. I better see this card. So they add back Future Fusion. I decide that there's honestly no way they win this based off of what they had before. So I Solemn Judgment the Future Fusion, and that's going to give us the win. If you guys like content like this, make sure you guys smash that like button and put it down in the comments what goofy deck you guys want to see me play in Edison Rated next. This deck was a lot of fun for me. Again, the export file will be in the comments down below. Make sure you guys go check out learntcg.com if you are looking to get better at the YCS level. This is Gores, signing off.